It's 7:01, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Troy Zoning Board of Appeals. This is our October 2024 meeting, so welcome to all of our applicants and our visitors and our city staff and fellow members of the board. We will get started tonight with the reading of our roll call, which is the first item on our agenda. So Mr. Evans, whenever you're ready, if you could take the roll.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Kenkre. Mr. Bossenbrook.
Here.
Mr. Fox.
Here.
Ms. Chambers.
Here.
Mr. Green.
Here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. Let's move on to our second item, which is where we read what we call the statement of procedure, which is how we deal with the cases that are before us. And so for that, I'll turn to my immediate left. Mr. Eisenbacher will read us our statement of procedure.
Hello. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors appointed by the Troy City Council to decide on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Applicants must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. Procedure. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the approved agenda. When an item is called, the chairperson will verify that the applicant is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. If there is less than a full board, 7 members, present at a meeting, an applicant may request a postponement so his or her request can be heard by a full board. If there is no request for a postponement, the applicant will be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the applicant makes their presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairperson will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand, and when recognized by the chairperson, come up to the podium. The speaker should identify themselves with name and address, indicate their relationship to the property in question, for example, next door neighbor, live behind the property, etc., and state whether they're in favor of or against the variance request and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairperson. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairperson to speak at one time. At the conclusion of public comments, the chairperson will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or postpone the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to Oakland County Circuit Court.
All right, thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher. We will move on to our next item, which is reviewing and approving last month's minutes from September 17. So unless there's any discussion or objection, can I entertain a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All right, motion from Mr. Fox, seconded by Mr. Green. And Mr. Evans, I think Mr. Kenkre is here, so if you could note that in the roll call.
Noted.
Thank you. So we will proceed to a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Evans, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre.
Yes.
All right, motion to approve the minutes has been approved. Now we'll look at tonight's printed agenda, and unless there's any discussion, Mr. Green, you have a
Just a
comment?
tiny one. As noted in the printed agenda, I believe that it says it is October 15th, and I would ask that that be amended for the record to October 15th.
Oh, the typo, yep.
Otherwise,
Oh.
no objection.
We'll make that change before the next printing on these.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you for the eagle eye, Mr. Green. And with that slight amendment, I think we'll consider the agenda approved for tonight as printed. And that will bring us to item number 5, which is we have 2 cases before us tonight, 5A and 5B. And the first one will be at 5589 John R. So we will turn it over to Mr. Evans for a presentation. I guess I'll note that I think we're having a few challenges with our main projector, so if you want to turn to your right or left, they'll be
Right.
projected on the sides. So.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
And so, yes, this is at the address listed in the agenda. This is for a variance request from the requirement that the minimum site area for an adult foster care facility be at least 40,000 square feet. The zoning ordinance requires 4,000 square feet per resident, and 10 residents are proposed. The site area is 34,798.5 square feet. Now, this property is located on John R. at the southwest corner of Abbotsford, and that is north of Long Lake and south of Square Lake. And as I zoom in on the aerials here, you can see I've outlined the subject property. There's a closer picture of the property, and everything in this area is zoned single-family residential. This is a survey of the property. I don't have any more slides to show because they're simply using the existing building and making no changes. The way the ordinance reads is that if you have a group adult foster care home of between 7 and 12 residents, you have to have at least 4,000 square feet per resident. Now, the history behind this is that, and this is ordinance prescribed, is this item was required to go to the Planning Commission for their approval. However, the applicant knew in advance that they were under the square footage requirements. So what the ordinance prescribes is that the Planning Commission receives it, does not approve it, and makes no recommendation on the variance. The next step is for this to come to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Once the Zoning Board renders a determination, it'll go back to the Planning Commission for their official action. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board for any questions.
Questions from the board for city staff?
Are there any requirements on how big each bedroom has to be?
Not in the city ordinance. There could be state ones, but the city doesn't require that.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Green.
Actually, you know what, it's going to be a question for the applicant. Never mind.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Evans. At this time, we will invite the applicant or their representative, if they would like to come up to the podium, and if you could identify yourself, and we have obviously your written submission, but anything else you'd like to present to the board, speaking to the statement of practical difficulty and your request for a variance, we would be happy to hear from you.
Thank you. And my name is Teresita Sandoval, and my address is 5589 John R. Road. And I am the manager of Emmanuel Senior Living.
My name is Brian DiBartolomeo. I think Paul has my spelling. It's DIBARTOLOMEO. I actually own a company called BLD Companies. We do construction, and we're kind of helping out. But I did have an answer to your question on the room sizes. State of Michigan on existing properties for AFCs is 80 square feet for a bedroom. 100 on new construction. Our rooms I think our rooms are 120 square feet for 3 of them, and one would be 144 square feet.
Did you have a question for us?
Well, I just want to, is there anything else you would want to present to the board that we're happy to open it up for questions, but.
Well, just we were talking about the planning meeting, and I have to add, thank you, Paul, but I have to add that the project was welcomed very well. They were very excited about our project. They know us, they have driven by us, and they saw our reviews on the internet and everywhere, and they were very familiar with the facility, what we do, and the service we provide our seniors. They were also very knowledgeable of the crisis that we me included, because I'm part of the public and also the business side of it, but we are all facing this crisis for our seniors. I was just checking with the Census Bureau, and in 4 more years, there's going to be a lot of baby boomers turning 80. So happy birthday, baby boomers. And that means they are going to need a lot more help in their own homes, and in places like ours, we can accommodate them. I mean, simple things like going to the bathroom, it just becomes super difficult. And I'll just share a story with you. I went to see and assess one of our seniors, and he's now with the Lord. He was a minister, and I knew God wouldn't let him suffer. But anyways, that's a side point. But when I went to do my assessment, we can allow taking them immediately to our homes without a TB test, without medical and all of that, if we see that there is a need. This gentleman cried when I told him I was going to take him. And the reason was because he couldn't go to the bathroom. He had an aide coming once a day, and the family paid per 2 or 3 hours. But if he didn't go to the bathroom in those hours, he will be stuck in his wheelchair, and he slept in his wheelchair. This is a reality happening in our community.
And you can tell Terry's very passionate on this, and for me, on the building side of it, we're not going to change anything. And other than turning the garage into 4 bedrooms, there's no change to the footprint. We're not looking to get too close to a sideline. We're not looking at making this building not look like it belongs in a residential area. From that side, from that point, other than, again, we can't buy any more property. She does own 2 properties put together. Behind us, there's a house on one side, and then there's the retention, water retention behind us. So there's no place for her to grow property-wise, and then it would be a weird-looking lot for a single-family home. But that's the only change again. The footprint stays the same.
And there's an easement, if in one of the slides that Paul was showing. Maybe if there wasn't that water retention, I wouldn't be here tonight, and we will be just working because the zoning approved us, and we would have all the square footage that we needed. But because you needed our back of our house, now we need you to add 1.2 rooms, because they already approved 2, and we have enough room for 0.8. We just need from you guys to approve 1.2 seniors to be taken care of. And the other thing I wanted to add is that also, maybe you saw the letters from our neighbors. My next door neighbors, they wrote out letters of support. They are very supportive of the project, the house. They are very happy, and in fact, they are also in their 80s, and we help them.
So I think it's best for just to open up if you guys have anything to ask on that.
Yeah, Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that property to the, behind the house. So that is a detention basin, it was
is.
put in as part of the street sort of subdivision?
Yeah, you can see behind 1942, there's a retention there. So, I mean, there was no way for her to expand back on the property, but she has basically a double lot there now. So.
Okay. Was that originally part of the 1942 address house, and it was split off?
It looks like it probably was at one time, but yeah, because their house looks tiny.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
But even if we bought the 1942 house, then it's not, it's not a continuous property.
Yep.
Mr. Fox?
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see
I
you.
can confirm that Planning Commission was incredibly interested in seeing in the project, and I think it's going to make a great addition to the community. I will ask, just for the record, and you may have mentioned it at Planning Commission, your seniors, do you take them outside? Like, is outside kind of a expansive part of the program that you guys run there, or?
I mean, what we do for them is that you see the back of the house, we have a deck. So when the weather is perfect, and I mean not too windy, not too sunny, not too nothing, we take them out there. And then we also take them to 7-Eleven, and that's like the wonderful thing for them to be able to go there and buy their treats. It's, you don't know, we wheel them out, and it's an excursion with my caregivers, yeah.
I know that 7-Eleven. That's fantastic. So really, in terms of the 4,000 per resident, you guys aren't going to be using any more space on the lot with adding those 4 rooms. Everything is still going to be confined to the deck area.
That's
So,
correct. And
thank you for clarifying.
we also had the inspection. I mean, we've been in business for 11 years, so the state has been there for 5+ times. And just this past February, when they were there, I was explaining to them what we were proposing, and they said, go for it. You have our support. Once you have it done, just submit your paperwork. We know you, and we'll just approve it. And they've been there for so many times that they were just waiting for us to. I never thought, to be honest, that I was going to come and meet you all wonderful people.
Yeah.
So you kind of said it real quickly. If you're going, what are the minimum size rooms that are required?
In an existing property, it would be 80 square feet. In a new build, it would be 100 square feet. Our rooms are, 3 of them are 120, and the other one's 144.
Okay. And how much community space do you have within that?
In that, that garage is that's what we're adding to, is that garage.
I understand that, but I'm saying community space. So they're in their room, they come out of their room.
Oh.
Where's the community space that they have?
Oh, we are already surpassed to what the state needed. That's why when they came to do the inspection, when I was talking to them, they said, oh, please go ahead. Even the number of bathrooms that we have, it's way more than we are required. So the space for the families to visit in the front of the house and back of the house, our TV room, there is plenty of space. And believe me, the state, when we are done with this, they are gonna come and measure everything once more, because they already did it. So they already have our paperwork, because we are not changing anything inside of the facility as it is. We are just, as Brian was saying, it's only the garage. So we have a garage door that it's gonna be just an entry to that area. And we already have a ramp built there, so the ramp is gonna, it's gonna be there still. I mean, it's gonna serve our seniors. Bathroom-wise, we have 3 full bathrooms, and we are not required to have 3, but we do have 3 for our seniors. And we have, in the basement, we have another bathroom for our staff. So, and we are not even required for that, but we just wanted to, when we built this home was abandoned. It was abandoned for so many years. It wasn't a foreclosure. So we took from one wall to the other. Everything was torn down, and our architect built this to serve our seniors.
Yeah.
And these bedrooms that you intend to put in the garage, they are going to have the same level of amenities as all the other bedrooms that are in the house.
Actually, I think those rooms are
Bigger.
bigger than the existing rooms. Yeah. And it will offer, I mean, comparatively, I'm also in this business. Terry's helped me on my side, and I'm helping her here. And, you know, her rooms are larger, and she's offering too, you know, her in for assisted living is $5,500 compared to, you know, the ones around. So it's also much more affordable than, say, you know, the people, Brookdale's $8,500
Yes.
to get in.
Yes. Yeah. And also going a little further with that point and the crisis that our seniors are facing, the cost for us starts at $5,500. I talked to the placement agencies that work with us and with other companies, and just to give you an example, I wanted to bring you this information. So American House, which was Anthology American House, now they are together, they start at $8,500, so $3,000 a month.
I just want to say one thing. So
Yeah, that-
regarding the financial
Yeah, that-
impact,
Okay.
that's not something that we can take into consideration.
Yeah.
So I just want to, you know,
I think her point, just again, they're just offering a more affordable solution to.
Exactly, to
the
this
Troy
crisis,
residents.
yes.
just the financial impact isn't something that,
No, I
that
know.
we're permitted to take into consideration, but I appreciate the spirit of what you're saying. So I just have a couple questions just to make sure that I understand. So you purchased this house you said 11 years ago, and at that point it was just in needed renovation, and you converted it into adult assisted care? Is that?
Adult foster care, yes.
Adult foster care, okay. And regarding the retention pond, is that also on your property, or is that to that?
It's the property behind.
It's that little, the property is sitting, 5589, it's sitting in a three lot space. The house it's facing John R. A lot of people, when they see it, even the city, when I came to do a few things, they think that Abbotsford, it's our front door. And our front door, it's on John R. So we have 3 lots. When I was doing the survey to separate them, because the idea was to build another senior facility on the side. But anyways, yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. And then, one other question I have is, so one of the things that we have to take into consideration to grant a variance is, under our statement of practical difficulty, something that's exceptional about the property itself, that, in other words, kind of sets it apart from similarly situated properties. And they use examples like shallowness, irregular shape, things like that. So I'm just curious, can you just explain what is exceptional about your parcel, that's bringing you to us to request a variance?
Well, I mean, the problem, I guess, is, again, there's no way for her to grow that lot in order to meet your requirements on that spot. I mean, if it was me building it from scratch, I'd have left it, went ahead and separated it, put another one in with 6 bedrooms next to it. Now you have 12 in that same amount of space. This way, she just wants to get 10 onto what is 3 lots.
And exactly.
If it was 3 lots separated and you had 3 different homes, you'd end up with 4 bedrooms in each one, or 5.
So you're talking about property characteristics, it's 3 lots. So if it was 3 single families times 4 bedrooms, it will be 12 bedrooms in that same space. We're only asking for 10.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, well, thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate it. We, at this point, will open up the public comment period. If there's any member of the public who wishes to come up to the podium and speak for or against, welcome to do that. I don't see anyone coming forward to do that. I know that we have, as the applicant mentioned, we have a number of written public comments in the record. I don't know if Mr. Eisenbacher, you want to maybe provide a quick summary of what we have. I know there's a number of letters. I don't know that we need to read all of them into the record. We might be here a while for that, but.
No, I counted and I saw 14 letters, and in reading through them, I saw that they were all in favor, and they included 2 neighbors.
All right, great. And is there anything else, Mr. Evans, that we didn't have in our packet, or?
No other comments.
Okay. Well, I think that would conclude the public comment hearing, so I'll close public comment. And at this point, return it to the board for any deliberation, discussion. I saw Mr. Fox raise his hand.
Yeah, so to just take a stab at answering your question, Mr. Chairman, regarding exceptional characteristics about the property, I would contend that abutting a retention pond, preventing any attempt to expand along that back line would suffice a exceptional aspect of the property. In regards to they can't expand because of the location of the public. I don't know, is that a city right-of-way, or like what specifically governs retention ponds?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And I displayed this earlier. I'll refer back to it. here on the overheads. So here's the property here, and these are subdivision names. And it appears that this retention pond, and the green outlines the subdivision boundaries as part of the Abbott's Park subdivision, which comprises of these lots right here. So if you follow the border, and there's another sub down here, and you can actually see the pavement change.
Yeah.
So that is it was required by the developer to handle stormwater, but the city takes over the maintenance of it to make sure it continues to function as it should in perpetuity.
So that would be, obviously, the rest of the board can discuss, but that would be my contention as to the exceptional characteristic of the property.
Mr. McCauley?
I've got a question. What's stopping them from expanding to the south side of the building? That detention pond has nothing to do with that because the access is coming in off of Abbotsford. You see where it's written ADM plat, part of lot? That's all open space there.
I think they own it, and the problem is that the entire parcel is only 34,000 squares, not 40, and so they'd have to buy something else up
Right.
to. So it's not about the size of the structure being able to expand south, it's that the property can't expand south.
My apologies, yep.
Right, that's someone else's private,
Right.
presumably that's a house there south of it.
All right.
I was just trying to figure out why the detention pond would make a difference on this because I don't see how it does.
I think I saw
So
Mr.
question, is this really a use variance that the property that is used for 6 people is now being asked that they want to use it for 10 people?
Mr. Evans?
So the use is allowed. It's a foster care facility. It is allowed. It's a dimensional variance because of the numbers that you need to add up to meet certain criteria. They could still, as you know, they're conducting now without a variance. They just have less residents.
Okay, Mr. Green.
So I will also take a stab. So because of that retention pond, which is required by the developer, which would either be the city or the developer, not any of the purchasers of the parcels from go of that subdivision other than the builder. So that would make the dimensional modification not the fault of the applicant or any of the previous property owners as far as the odd shape of it. In order to make this work, if I've got this right, the applicant would essentially have to buy 1942 or a similar one, get those lots merged, and then knock down and build up, or build up what she's got and knock down the other one, or knock down what she's got and as was noted, request parcel splits. So that's quite an oddity. Her attempt is to use something existing that fits to my mind, fits the vibe of the neighborhood better, doesn't feel off, and does it within the space. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. I'm sort of uniquely aware of this sort of thing. I have a rezoned in a residential area assisted living facility 2 doors down from me at the end of my block that does a similar situation. I don't know their quality of care or anything else about it, but it's nice that there's not sort of an industrial vibe at the end of the block. So that's a really nice thing to be able to have in your community, some facility that fits in. That makes sense to me from that perspective. So I don't think it would, as was noted, they're not planning to alter outside of it. But I do have a question for Mr. Fox. Sorry. So the 4,000 feet per resident, what is, if you know, either the history or the reasoning behind that?
I would not, so that's city specific, right? That's not Mr. Evans.
I think it's
I
state.
asked, so Brent Savadon is the director, and he attends all the planning commission meetings, so he's familiar with this process.
Yeah.
And Okay, I can't see it. I asked him today, and I will share my response, his response. Now I'll summarize it. So, if you've got a facility, a group, adult foster care up to 6 people, we have to treat it as single-family residential. It can go anywhere that a house can go, and you have to treat them exactly like a house. They don't have to go to the planning commission or any of that. Over 6, up to 12, can be considered more of a commercial facility from a community character standpoint. And so there can be restrictions such as area per resident on those. And it's Brent's belief that the setback distance that you might get when you have more property could lead to a better neighbor, but in his opinion, sometimes a less or more of a commercial nature can depend on the operator or the operation itself and not necessarily density in this case. So we don't know the history except that it seems to be a carryover from when we rewrote the ordinance in 2013, but I'm not sure how far back that requirement goes. Does that shed some light on your question?
It's some. I think it's actually a positive to me that you're not aware of it, because from what I can find, it looks like this may, that sizing may be a remnant of civil rights history, the expansion to a point where people can't afford it. And so I'm not trying to get into anything, but like, I'm wondering if that is necessary, because if you're supposed to treat it like single family homes, and it's not operating as a single family home, it's a business, and this would run with the land, which is the main concern. If that requirement is there for that reason, and I do not know that for any sort of certainty, then to me that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If the bedrooms are already above size and the facility looks spacious, I've not been in it, but on paper, then to me that the note about Euclidean geometry may be not moot, but less relevant here.
Yeah, Mr. McCauley.
I got a question, then I have a statement to make. You said up to 6 is considered residential still, is it? Or
Right,
what?
that state law says you treat them the same way as single-family residential.
Up to 6, after
Right.
6, then it becomes more of a business.
7 to 12,
7 to 12.
now the city, local municipality can impose certain,
Okay, and that's what we're looking at with our zoning.
the 4,000 square foot
Okay.
is one of those, yeah.
Okay, so understanding that and knowing that wouldn't the applicants bring it to us? I look at this property. This property is 3,400 square feet approximately, and they're wanting to go beyond that, put more residents in there than the single-family residential requirements of 6 to the business one of 7 or more. And as I read this, I look at this as the characteristics which make this compliance with dimensional requirements shall not be of a personal nature. I believe it is of a personal nature, because it states right in their application that if they added 2 more rooms, I'm looking for their exact verbiage, 2 more rooms, financially, it is not viable without realizing the full potential of the 4 sub-rooms, this expansion. So basically, it's making money, from my standpoint. So I look at this as a potential, if they can add 2 more and still be underneath the city zoning, then at that point in time, anything above that, that's just money-making in my mind. And those zoning ordinances are in place for a reason. And I'll be honest, at this point in time, I would not support this. I would take the 2 and know that you now have expanded your facility by 1/3 compared to what it was, and have a little extra space for some community living space or something else, exercise room or something to that effect.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCauley. Okay, I think, Mr. Fox, did you have your hand up first?
I was just curious where, if in the packet, there's normally like an example template for a motion. What page is it on?
Very top
Very, very top.
of the packet.
Yeah, page 2.
Second
Thank
page, I
you.
believe.
All right. That was my question. So please, whoever's
Okay.
next.
Mr. Green?
So, to your point, Mr. McCauley, I was wondering that to some extent myself, because even, it wasn't just him, but Mr. Savadant said that the applicant is a bit of a unicorn, and that in and of itself, that and a lot of the letters and everything else makes it a bit personal, right? Like, so if this runs with the land and the applicant doesn't magically live forever, then how do we ensure that the density is not a problem? And I understand that concern, and I'm wrestling with that myself. But I'm not sure that this harms anything otherwise. On the other hand, I'm wondering if the board, my fellow board members, would consider something where, and it may not matter, but where we grant it to permit 9, like a lesser variance that gets 1 additional instead of 2, or 3 additional instead of 4, but I don't know. That's a whole different conversation.
Okay, well, yeah, Mr. Fox.
So one fact from the applicants that I want to remind my fellow board members, to me, when it comes to the external requirement of the space, the applicant's current business model does not require that they are quote unquote walking around the property. The outdoor space that the applicant will be occupying is not changing at all per this plan. They are still going to be contained to the deck. So for that reason, I don't necessarily know, I don't think that it's, there was a statement, the ordinance is in there for a reason. I think in situations where maybe a facility is more focused towards having their residents be outdoors, there's more of a conversation regarding the space and the distance from the neighboring houses. I will say on the note of this being a personal nature, I would argue that any facility that were to, because we're in a unique situation where this is technically single-family zoning, but there is a commercial use that is permitted in single-family zoning. Any person or any other business that came to move into that site would be subject to the same limitations of the land, where normally on a corner you'd have a couple of different options of ways you could expand if you wanted to do this type of expansion. And the reason that I think the retention basin is so relevant is because it basically removes 50% of the potential options that this lot has versus another corner lot that was attempting to make a similar expansion. So that to me is a unique characteristic of the property, and the reason that I don't believe it qualifies as personal is that any business that came in to that location and was attempting to expand the number of residents that it had would run into the same issue. It's not specific to just this owner.
I just have one quick question for city staff. This is just a very technical question, but since this went before the planning commission, but because they didn't take any action, there's no issue with our liaison participating. I just want to make sure they didn't vote on it, they set it aside, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
just
checked
wanted
at
to
the
double
planning
check.
commission meeting, I did ask.
Okay, I just want to double check. All right. I think Mr. Kenkry was first, and then Mr. Eisenbacher.
I'm somewhat conflicted here because I'm referring to this letter from Brent Savidan to Planning Commission, I think it's on page 5. And he says that this requires a special use approval. That's what the letter says. It says that at present, it is considered a residential use. By adding the 4 residents, it changes the classification to adult foster care, small group home. which requires special use approval. And I think we are the ones, who grant the special use, right? I think that's what I think, right?
So I believe, as I understood it was explained at Planning Commission, Planning Commission will be the one to officially vote on the special use.
Okay.
We are just approving whether or not the variance even makes it possible, if that makes sense.
Okay. But the planning commission has not yet voted
Yes,
on the
if the
special
Planning
use.
Commission had voted, I would not be able to be casting any type of vote here today. And when this does eventually go back to Planning Commission, I will recuse myself from that meeting, if and when this makes it back to Planning Commission.
So that kind of explains one thing for me. Now, this is such a special case of a special use of a property, and I think from the particular use that it is being put to, it does not look like 40,000 or the 35,000 really kind of changes anything in any way to me. And so I'm leaning towards approving.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Eisenbacher, you want to go?
Yes, thank you. As is stated in that letter, I travel by this property very often when bicycling to Paint Creek Trail, to Macomb Orchard Trail, or to Stony Creek Metro Park, and I've been doing that for most of 20 years on weekends. And if they didn't have a very small sign out front when they have a vacancy, I wouldn't have known that it was a care facility or anything else. It looks like a house. The other thing is that back when I was a city councilman here in Troy, when we were planning the expansion of John R., all the properties along John R. had a portion of their front yard taken away, which reduced the effective lot size. I see that as a hardship because it's only 1.2 people is the hardship. If the city takes away some of the property from the land, that also ties into it, although that was done many years ago. It's been many years since I was on city council. And the hardship that's been mentioned that is even bigger is the fact that it's boxed in by two streets on two sides of the property, a city-owned detention pond in the back, and a house that's not for sale on the other side. And there's no change to the expansion. We've got 14 letters from residents and interested parties saying how great this facility is. There's obviously a community need long-term for elder care. I don't see a negative impact on this to anyone. And I don't see, and this is why we have a zoning board of appeals, is for these situations that don't fit perfectly into the zoning ordinance. So I would like to move a resolution, and we'll see if there's a second. Basically the page 2 resolution for approval. The exceptional characteristic of the property is the fact that it's boxed in on 3 sides for public use. The characteristic which makes compliance is related to this premises. It's not of a personal nature. It would be needed by any group home of any of the different types of group homes operating in this location. The characteristic was not created by the current or previous owner, and that makes compliance with the dimensional requirements difficult was not created by the current or previous owner, and the proposed variance is not at all harmful or alter the character of the area because it's transparent for what they're changing. It's on the inside of the building.
Second.
Okay, a motion to grant, seconded by Mr. Fox. Any member of the board wants to further discuss? Yes, Mr. Green.
I was trying to think it out, and so what I've got is, so in other words, if they knocked it down and rebuilt it in another way and sold it to a stranger with ill intent, right, because it's private property, and they knocked it down and they built another multi-dwelling facility on that property, they could still only house, if we grant this, only house 10 people and no more. And they would still have to have bedrooms of at least 100 square feet as it stands today, could be greater in future, and no more, or no less. And they could build a larger building if that's what's permitted on that lot, but they could still only have the 10, and they would still need to meet municipal, state, and federal requirements for the care and operations. So from my arguing with myself, from my previous note that it was about the individual, while the request is by the individual, the requirements that she has to meet, the ones that are considered at least the minimum for care that she has exceeded from all the records that we have right now, would still be in effect in this case. And so to me, that does remove the personal largely. I still hear you with the money aspect as the reason, but as the son of a father who lives in Troy, in American House, in independent living, seeking, and I'm going to put this on the record, seeking assisted, we will not be looking in your direction just to avoid that conflict entirely. And my brother is performing the search, not me. But as somebody who's aware of the situation and the crisis, and that there is a real need, and this is, to me, this is a benefit to the city as well as to the individual, because it will benefit other individuals and the community.
All right, thank you, Mr. Green. I think I tend to side with Mr. McCauley. I just can't get past what I think seems to be I don't see an exceptional characteristic to the property. I don't know that this same logic wouldn't apply to a similarly situated facility anywhere else in the city. So I don't know that I find all the elements satisfied. So I don't think I can support the variance request, but I think we've probably exhausted discussion unless there's any other members of the board who want to add anything else. I think we've had a lot of exhaustive discussion and good commentary. So the motion pending to grant, made by Mr. Eisenbacher, seconded by Mr. Fox. A yes would be to grant, a no would be to deny.
Mr. McCauley.
No.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre.
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
No.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
All right, motion to grant has been passed, 5 votes to 2. So congratulations. Thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate your time and your presentation. We will move on to 5B, our second item tonight, which is 645 Burtman. So Mr. Evans, whenever you're ready to present on 645 Burtman.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh.
Everyone okay?
What's that?
We lose somebody?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is at 645 Burtman, a variance request to allow a proposed detached accessory structure, garage, be set back 3 feet from the side property line where the zoning ordinance requires
10.
the proposed garage be set back 6 feet from the side property line. And this is in a residential neighborhood. We have Stevenson right down the middle of this slide, and 14 Mile is at the bottom here. The subject property is outlined in red. Excuse me, I'll continue to zoom in. Burtman there. We'll zoom in further. That's the existing garage that they want to replace. This is a page out of their application. I'm going to zoom in on the site plan over here. And the streets at the bottom, we have the house here.
Excuse me.
And the garage is proposed to be, well, I think they can confirm if it's in the same spot or not, but nonetheless, the garage is proposed to be 3 feet away from this side property line, while where 6 feet is required. And I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. Any questions from the city staff?
So just to make clear, the existing garage is currently 3 feet away from that side setback.
I'm not certain if it's 3, but maybe the applicant and their builder who's here can
Clarify.
answer that.
Cool. Thank you.
Mr. McCauley.
I believe this is like the third one that we've had on that street or within that area regarding the side setbacks being 3 feet away from the property line?
This is an older part of Troy, and
Right.
it does appear, based on the development patterns, that the ordinances were different at the time a lot of the development occurred here.
Right, okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans, for your presentation. We will invite the applicant and/or their representative to the podium. Welcome. Thank you for coming out. If you could identify yourself and
Thank you.
proceed.
I'm Paul from Italy Merit Construction. This is Robert Jocks. He's the place of the house in Burton. As I heard, yes, I've been here before building garages, and where this 3 foot comes from, I can't explain why, but I have multiple homes or lot numbers, 638, 633, 626, 621, 614, and 611, that is 3 foot off the fence line. I submitted this to the city once before, and they've changed it, went in front of you guys, you blessed me and moved forward. Homeowner saw our sign, came down and says, hey, my garage is not working very well. It's the floor's starting to crack and doing all of this. Well, because I know that I went through this process and I said, you're gonna have to go 6 foot off the fence line. Was very hesitant to that because they have a patio and they have a patio door, and moving it over 3 feet with total 6 foot off the fence line would be obstruction of vision in this. So they got a little bit upset to say, hey, why can't we just build right where you're at? And I says, well, the city's not allowing me to do that. So he's improving this garage, not enlarging it. It's existing. It'll give a great resale value because it's not deteriorating. And we would raise it up a little bit higher and put proper footings inside there. So that's Mr. Robert here. He can probably add to it.
Yeah, I just prepared a few quick notes. The practical difficulty present if the proposed garage is constructed...
microphone?
Oh, I'm
Sir,
sorry.
can
Just
you?
ask if you give your name.
Oh, sure.
Your name, sorry.
Yeah, Robert Jocks. I'm the homeowner of the property at 645 Burtman. We've lived there for 8 years now, my wife and I and 2 children, although one has moved out. But the practical difficulty present if the proposed garage is constructed 6 feet from the lot line would be a obstruction of my sight line to the backyard. The proposed garage would be in the exact same location as the current garage, which is 3 feet from the lot line. The proposed garage is the exact same size. It's 22 by 20 feet. It's a 2-car detached garage. It's the exact same size as the current garage. The proposed garage at 3 feet off the lot line would allow the same sight lines as the current garage. And as Mr. Schiller mentioned, up and down the street, and I think one of the board members mentioned there may have been some other applicants recently of note in the same area. Nearly every garage in the subdivision is 3 feet from the 3 feet off the lot line presently, and so the proposed garage would match the essential character of the area as it matches the current 3 feet from the lot line. So that's all I had at this time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Just one more thing, and if we do move it over, and if that's not granted the 3 foot and we had to move it over to 6 foot, it would be very extreme costs of rerouting the grade in the back because it has conformity now is where it's at.
I guess, as I said to the previous applicant, we're not allowed to consider costs and so forth. It's just not something that's within our...
I shouldn't say, yep.
So appreciate that comment, but it's just not something that's properly before us. Can I ask one question of the applicant? So can you explain a little more what you mean by obstruction of the sight line of the rear yard. What do you mean by that?
Well, as I look out the patio or our back of the home into the yard, if the garage were moved over, it would infringe on the view into the back of the yard. We don't have any elaborate landscaping or anything, but we do have some, plants and the neighbors, of course, live behind us and everything. So it would,
Sorry, can you speak into the mic a little more?
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Thank you, sorry.
Yeah. So I was just saying that it would obstruct the view slightly to have the structure essentially, 3 more feet over into the center of the yard.
Okay, and I guess how, in your estimation, how would that obstruction, I guess, be different from other properties that are around you? I mean, if they have, I'm just kind of looking at the overhead map, and they're all kind of similarly situated, shaped parcels with some similarly placed garages. I mean, if they also had to shift over, wouldn't they have the same potential obstruction of their backyard if they moved it over?
Well, they would, yes, they would. At this time, they are not moving their garages, though. They're not replacing their garage. They're living with the existing conditions, which had the garage set 3 feet from the lot line, which is where we're proposing the replacement to go. So you're right. If each and every home on the street did have to move their garage over 3 feet, they would face the same obstruction that I'd be facing.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for answering those questions. All right, I saw Mr. Fox's hand go up.
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, wasn't?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mr. Green, did you have a question?
Yes. I am fortunate enough to also have it looks like a 2-car garage. And mine is on the lot line. The eave drips right onto it, sits even older. So that's grandfathered in. So I understand the concern. Ours currently is buckling and heaving on the floor, on the ground. The structure's okay, but one day we'll have to do something about that. And when we do, we're going to have to be compliant. And I think it's going to have to be smaller because it's also quite deep. And I think per our zoning, we'd have to have reduced depth as well as width to comply with maximum outbuilding on lot per zoning, or I'd have to come up here. But in that situation, like, we would have to do that. So we'd end up with a narrower garage to pull 3 feet off the edge on one side and then maintain the sight lines if that's what we wanted to do and could. So we'd have a 1-car or a 2 narrow car, depending on size of cars, garage, but it would then be compliant. We'd have to go 6, but you would have to go 3. Is there a particular, storage is a premium, it's a real thing, but is there a particular objection to that in order to be compliant? Because shifting it over, I totally understand the visibility from both an aesthetic, but also from, we live in a fairly safe, a really safe area, but from a security perspective, being able to see your lot gives you peace of mind, or may. But what is the objection to narrowing? Is really my question, because that would make you compliant without sightline loss.
Mr. Green, I'm sorry. Hold 1 second. I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you say it again?
So I'm
just like
he's looking to rebuild on the applicant is looking to rebuild essentially what he's got, fresh, clean, structurally sound, top to underground. But I'm wondering about, instead of having to shift it over and redo grade, or having to, or this may still be part of it, or having, and losing sight lines, in order to be compliant, what's needed is 3 additional feet. So if he's going to knock down and rebuild for structural soundness, why not knock down and rebuild 3 feet in to make it 6, so that he has no zoning variance requirement?
Thank you for clarifying. So, sir.
That could be a consideration, certainly. The current garage, we're very comfortable with the size. There's not a whole lot of extra storage, but with 2 cars in, it does give enough room to, open a door on each of the cars if they were both in. To move, it sounds like essentially you're asking, as you look at the garage from the house, you would essentially be saying, on the left side, move that in 3 feet, and then the right side, you would move out to 6 feet?
It would be...
I'm just trying to envision what you had in mind.
Yeah, if I've got the lot lines right, the lot line is on the right side. So I'm saying leave the left right where it is and pull because what's the requirement?
6.
It's required to 6. So they need an additional 3. That's what the variance request is. So I'm saying leave the left exactly where it is and pull the right side in to the left by 3 feet.
Right.
So just
okay.
lop it off.
Okay, yeah. That would make for a very tight, you could probably get 2 cars in and maybe open a door, but the practicality isn't such that we would do that. At that point, we would probably not improve. At that point, we probably wouldn't improve the property at that point, just given the tightness then that the new garage would impose on us.
Okay, any other, Mr. Cancri?
So looking at the picture, it kind of feels like your driveway is kind of leads directly to your garage door. Here, I'm looking at the picture on what's the page where you have shown the pictures.
Is it 106? Yeah, I think.
Right.
Go straight.
That's page 105, I think.
Oh, pardon.
Right.
106.
106. No, the one before that. Not the picture before that. No.
This one here?
It's
Right.
Okay.
So the driveway kind of, so in this picture, which I think is the 105, shows that your driveway kind of leads directly to your garage door, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I see. And if you were to move it further inside, would that kind of pose any kind of difficulty in terms of maneuvering your car, to get in the parking space?
To some extent, but not to a great extent. That wasn't maybe the main priority, but certainly it would make for a tighter turn going in and coming out. So yes, I guess in answer to your direct question, it would.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eisenbacher.
Okay, in review of our criteria and the request from the petitioner, the thing that I saw is that the exceptional characteristic in this case is similar to several others that have come before us, insofar as this property in an R1E zoning district is significantly smaller than other houses in an R1E zoning district. And the reason for that is because it was zoned prior to the creation of the city's zoning ordinance. And It's just the exceptional smallness of the property within the R1E zoning district that creates the problem. The garage is a standard size. I mean, it's what fits cars and a little bit of storage. It's not exceptional to request a 20 by 22 garage. It's what they are. It's not of a personal nature. The garage is not in good shape. The gentleman petitioning would like to replace it. It's just a garage. And the characteristic which makes compliance difficult is not being created by the current or previous owner. It was created by the change in the zoning ordinance. It was on this location, it was legal. Now he just wants to replace it in the same previously legal location. And then the last one, it can't be harmful or alter the essential character of the area because so many of the houses in the same neighborhood have the exact same 3-foot setback off of the property. And for those reasons, I would move
I think we're still in,
resolution if we can. Oh, we're still talking. Oh,
still talking.
We still have to open the thing, even though there's only one person in the audience. Sorry.
Yeah, so, I mean.
We lost, yeah.
That's okay. I guess, unless there's any other questions for the applicant, we can move on to the next. I don't see any. So thank you, gentlemen, for stepping forward.
Thank you.
And you can head back to your seats.
Losing track.
It's okay. Let me open up the public hearing. And Mr. Evans, I don't know if we have anything in written correspondence regarding this. I don't see anyone coming forward to speak on the matter, so we'll close the public hearing. Now we can go to the board's deliberation. I won't make you repeat all of that, Mr. Eisenbacher.
If we can cut and paste my previous statement to this appropriate time of the meeting, I would like that, and move the resolution and see if there's a second.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Eisenbacher, seconded by Mr. McCauley. Is there any discussion from the board?
For the record, I don't think we quite got there because you interrupted. That is a motion to approve the request, yes?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just literally for the record, the motion on the table is one to approve.
Yes, that is a motion to approve. Thank you for keeping me honest.
Sorry. I think it got cut off at the end of the other one.
Okay. Any comments, discussion from the board? I don't see any more discussion, so I guess we'll proceed to a vote. Mr. Evans, so this is a motion to approve. Yes, we'll grant. No, we'll deny.
Mr. Green.
No, sorry.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
No.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre.
Yes.
Motion passed. So variance has been granted. Thank you for your presentation, for coming out, gentlemen. Appreciate it. That brings us to the conclusion of the hearing of cases tonight. So we'll move on to communications. Are there any communications, Mr. Evans?
We do have some applications for our November meeting, so please plan to attend.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Fox.
So I guess I have a question to the general board. I think it was stated earlier that we've had at least, 3 or 4 different residents specifically from this neighborhood. I call it the half Clausen neighborhood because it's like half the neighborhood is cut into Clausen. But it is an older neighborhood of Troy. We've had multiple applicants coming in regarding the garage spacing. And I think in each case, the ZBA has concluded that complying with the ordinance would change the character of the neighborhood more than not complying, granting a variance. So I guess my question is, when I was originally brought on to the ZBA, it was kind of explained to me, if you see something repeatedly coming up and repeatedly going in the same direction, should we not have a discussion and potentially make a motion to ask the Planning Commission to take a look at the ordinance as it relates to that topic? And then potentially make amended changes so that we don't keep having these cases come up. I mean, I know R1E, I believe, is the smallest of the 5 residential zoning districts the city has. So I don't know. again, I don't have a legal degree. I don't exactly know the best way to address it in the ordinance, but just given kind of the repeated pattern of, because I guess I want to make it clear. I understand that the point of the zoning ordinance is aspirational. The goal is when someone is not complying with the ordinances, that they then, when they renovate or they upgrade their house, they then change the property so that they do comply with the ordinances. And I think what the decision that the ZBA has been making in regards to these cases is that that would ultimately impact the character of the neighborhood to a degree that this body at least has not been comfortable with inputting on the applicants and putting on the folks who live in that neighborhood. So I do wonder if there is a way that we can create some type of exception or some type of, because I looked at the section of the ordinance that this was referencing. It's not something that's very easily changed in terms of you can apply it to one of the 5 residential districts or something a little more specific or nuanced. But I think it is at least worth some kind of presentation where we could understand the options, I guess, that are available to try to, like have someone like from the city's legal team say like, well, you could do it this way, or well, you could do it this way. Some kind of like some kind of language that the planning commission or this body or however it would go about is able to look at and kind of comment on / consider. But that's just a question to the board.
All right, you want to start, Mr. McCauley?
Sure. I understand exactly what you're saying. The problem is this is such a small section of Troy, and the number of residential properties that fit that category are much greater than this area. I understand completely what you're saying. If there is something that we could go in and say, okay, this area that's been platted in that, for this time zone back in 1950, this area, which is that subdivision in a sense, that we can say that if you're replacing a garage or something like that, give them an exemption to that area so they don't have to come in front of us, I would agree with that. But to change the ordinance to cover everybody, I wouldn't do that, if that makes sense. Having lived on Huntley, which is 3 blocks away from there,
Yeah.
and having experienced that narrow driveway garage fiasco, so I get it, because I think it's specific to that area, not so much the ordinance. So if there's something we could do for that area, I would agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes, looking at the map on the table in front of us, we got that section in that area in section 35. We have over in section 30 on the border with Birmingham. That neighborhood has come up several times with garages and just general setback of the houses. We have near what was Big Beaver Elementary, near Big Beaver in Rochester, there's a couple of old subdivisions in there. And there's one other area that I'm not remembering that has older and smaller houses, that each of these are like an R1F, where they're a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
And if I may, what can be done? I mean, the city would somehow have to study. Is it my turn?
No, I want to say something, but you still go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing the city can consider, if the planning commission chooses to take this up, is do a study of those areas. What are the unique characteristics? I mean, it could be platting, it could be lot size, it could be existing development patterns. And do some models to say, well, if everyone were to rebuild their garage, this would impact X number of homes. So it can be done. And if there's unique characteristics in our existing neighborhoods, you got to decide, do you want those neighborhoods to migrate towards the development pattern that we've established, or maintain some of the existing due to the characteristics?
Well, hold on. I guess this is good discussion, but I think it would be helpful if this were to become maybe a separate agenda item in a future meeting, to give either Mr. Evans or our city attorney liaison just to present the topic after having an opportunity to maybe prepare something or reflect on it, or give us just an opportunity to consider it, rather than us just kind of bouncing and deciding what we want to do. So that's just my thought. Mr. Eisenbacher, did you have a comment?
And what Mr. Evans was saying also reminded me that these same areas also have problems with porches. Because they're small in the back for garages, they're small in the front for any front of the house improvement.
Mr. McCauley?
Just to go with what you were saying, it would almost look like if there was some presentation that we could put together a resolution to send to the City of Troy City Council to help with this, is what we'd probably want to draft.
I think I'd like to know, just even from our city attorney, what specifically are we permitted to do or authorized to do as a zoning board of appeals? Is it to offer a recommendation, something official, or I guess I'd like to have a better understanding of whatever problems we've identified or concerns we have, what is the proper mechanism for us to either, bring it to the planning commission if that's appropriate, or bring it to some other, city board. That would be helpful to know so that we're not exceeding any of our authority or stepping over any of our boundaries in doing that. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And what I can do as well, because you guys are giving me some ideas, is consult with Mr. Sabinow when he gets back into town next week and say, okay, I think I can convey what I'm hearing. There's 3 areas, maybe there's some other areas of the city, but the board has concerns about how the existing ordinance fit in with what's there now. And say, okay, do we do a presentation so we all have an understanding? Do we simply try to give direction, say, okay, you can make a recommendation to the city council, do you make a recommendation to the planning commission, et cetera? Because what we don't want to have happen is this necessarily fall on deaf ears and no one gets back to anybody, it just sits there. If I'm reading everybody right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would want to, we'd have to speak as a board.
Of course.
And understand that we're sort of following it through the right channels and have an understanding of what sort of the lay of the land is. So Mr. Fox.
Yeah, to echo agreement with the chairman, I think having like a separate agenda item down the line where it's just a discussion of this topic and potentially make a motion to deflect something. To me, this seems like a planning commission item because we're more on this board quasi-judicial and they're a little bit more policy and legislative focused. I do also want to just repeat for the sake of maybe just putting this on city staff's radar, the idea that Mr. McCauley had regarding an exemption potentially as it relates to when you're just renovating an existing external structure, something like the garage is currently there and thus something to that degree. Again, I'm not the expert of how it would be worded, but just reiterating to keep on staff's mind that like the whole, if you're just renovating, potentially some level of an exemption. But
We have that.
I appreciate the consideration.
Oh?
Yeah, for non-conforming structures, you can do certain types of renovations up to a certain point.
So then how did the case we saw today not meet that qualification?
He's knocking it down and
Full
putting a
tear
new
down.
pad.
Oh, it's a full knockdown and rebuild as opposed to a
The builder
renovation.
suggested that they were doing nice things and suggested renovation, but I think the homeowner clarified very clearly, this is a brand-new structure.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
All right, any other comments? Mr. Eisenbacher?
I'm curious, just taking it one little step further. If they had picked up the garage, moved it over to the yard, put in a new foundation, moved the house, or moved the garage back, fixed any broken boards, redone the siding, put a new roof on it,
Yes.
would have he had to be here?
No.
We'd have to see construction prints to see exactly how much that involved.
Thank you.
After you pay a $400 application fee.
Can I have a question?
Yes?
I went to see the site and the
Can we,
garage. Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Yep.
I went to see the site and the gutters are down, the wood and the boards are a mess. The garage has died, in my opinion, from looking at it. So that's why I understood garage demo put in new structure and leave everything the same. It's just like taking your hand and doing that. Okay? Okay.
All right,
just so
thank you,
I
Ms. Chambers.
understood.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've moved through our communications and any miscellaneous business. There's no other, nothing else, Mr. Evans?
I'm so sorry.
Green's got a hand. Sorry.
Okay, so let's be quick.
Yes, sir. To the thing that we noted in the first case, or that I noted in the first case, I would be curious to have the Planning Commission look at the 4,000-foot requirement for that particular category and see if that makes sense anymore. If that was something that we've just carried forward or expanded as we carry it forward, that shouldn't be that, as we work towards tighter clusters for better practice to be more efficient and to grow. This would be a thing that I think that would be, I personally would recommend it, but I don't know if we as a board want to, or at least I would want to know more about it from the Planning Commission.
I know that when that item was at Planning Commission, there was a lot of sympathy for the applicant. Now, on this particular conversation, I will be recusing myself as I did cast a vote here today, so I won't be casting a duplicate vote. However, I believe there are planning commissioners that are sympathetic to that conversation, and I would not be surprised if potentially any are watching, I don't know if they watch these meetings, if other planning commissioners potentially will bring that up. So I don't know if that's like a motion we would necessarily need to make. I think Planning Commission is at least on that topic and aware of the topic. But
Well, I think you've just communicated it, Mr. Green, to someone from the Planning Commission, so.
that's not me because I won't be able to talk.
Mr. McCauley.
One last thing on that. I look at that 4,000 square feet, that's a density issue.
Yeah.
And and the whole idea is we don't want to overpopulate an area. So the whole purpose of that is to keep from overcrowding in spaces and areas. So that whole premise is that, okay, we want it this big. We want this much space. We want to be able to keep our density. We don't want to become more of an urban situation than a suburban situation.
Yeah, for me, that's where we cross into the quasi-judicial, where that's not us anymore, where that's a decision for the executives and the legislators in the city, and we just work within that framework.
Right.
But I hear where you're at. I have one other quick note, which is just a thank you to our student citizens for showing up, for extra credit or not, but I hope you at least learned something and maybe enjoyed it.
Okay, all right. Well, we can move up to public comment. I think we're at that item. And see if there's any public comment. Anyone else want to add to the public comment section? We'll close the public comment and we are adjourned to November. Thanks, everybody.